Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. It's also nice to be seen.
We've created the space and time. So that's the masculine energy. That's the action, the inspired action. And then we show up in our fullness, in our presence, and we see what emerges. And the more we do that in these pockets of our life, the more it extends into all of life, because there's nothing separate. This podcast is not separate from my life. This is an extension of my life.
Yes.
You got yourself an air fryer, babe. I saw it in the car.
She saw it in the car.
I saw it in the car. You expanded.
Days later, I was like, I'm gonna get this air fryer no matter what.
And this idea that you just said about it's not pulling us into their space, because actually if that were slack, loose, guess what would happen? I would just be in his space.
Yeah.
Or he would be in mine.
Yeah.
It's actually the tension that keeps us in our own space.
Yeah. How's this? Am I sitting up too tall?
No.
Should I slouch a little bit more?
If you could make yourself smaller, that would be really great.
Should I lower my sense of self by like... Well, we've been apart for
a couple days,
and I've managed to survive, which is shocking.
Yeah, he came back in one piece, like with clothes on.
Yep. I just put these clothes on for the first time today, but I drove naked.
So, point is, we can be apart for 2 days and still
we
look like human beings.
Yeah, and still manage to like each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is, runs a little deeper than this surface level attraction model.
Yeah, he finds me just repulsive on the surface.
Wow. It's just like, what am I doing? But there's something inside. Welcome to episode 2. Wake up.
With us. It's only our second one, so we're still practicing.
It's just number 2. And we're still deciding on the name as well as the tagline. Maybe you guys can help us.
There you go.
Yeah. We know for sure that it's Grand Rising, which is something that we say in the morning to each other. So we're going to say it to you.
Grand Rising.
And instead of good morning, which if you feel into the idea of a good morning, words are everything and words have meaning. And mourning is not just mourning. Mourning is the mourning, the death, the letting go of what was yesterday, who you were yesterday. So every time we wake up, it actually is a good morning to the thoughts that we were thinking, to the reality that we were living just the day before. So we live each day in the moment, but we also allow ourselves to mourn, be in the process of mourning, knowing that today is going to be something else, something new, something that is potentially unpredictable, as our lives often are. And next to that, we greet each other with Grand Rising.
Yeah. So after the morning, we have the rise, and we have the ascension into what is next and what is possible. And when I first heard from you this idea of mourning, my mornings made so much more sense to me. Yeah. And I invite you, if you did not listen to our first episode, to go back and listen to it, because we talked about the death or the loss that one might experience in relationship and what we experience each and every day. So,
Yeah. And we're going to experience it a couple more times on film. So
Just-
you'll get to see what that process is like.
Yeah.
Especially when, eye contact is so key. And when we make eye contact with someone, we're technically stepping completely into them. And as they look at us, they're stepping completely into us. And there is a sense of non-separation that comes with looking another person in the eye. And which is maybe potentially why some people don't maintain eye contact, because they underneath, right, in the unconscious, they may be feeling as though their sense of self is being intruded upon, right?
They don't want to be seen, maybe.
Yeah. It's just a potentiality. We're not experts.
No. And I'll be honest, I don't maintain eye contact at certain times, and I become aware of when I don't. So it's something to be curious about.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today?
That's a great question.
Yeah. No.
I feel like you are going to share with everyone out there that this is our process, that we drop into a space and time in a present moment and see what emerges.
Yeah.
And my experience thus far doing that with you is pure magic. And this is for me the confirmation that as much as we feel we can plan, and as much as I'll speak for self, and I believe there's a collective sense of this as well, that as much as I feel I can plan it and write it out and have it set, that can be so limiting to what actually wants to present itself, to what wants to emerge. So what we have done is we've created the space and time. So that's the masculine energy. That's the action, the inspired action. And then we show up in our fullness, in our presence, and we see what emerges. And the more we do that in these pockets of our life, the more it extends into all of life, because there's nothing separate. This podcast is not separate from my life. This is an extension of my life.
Yes.
So that's one thing we could talk about.
Yeah.
And
it's happening right now. It's like we're talking about it. Yeah.
And the other, what I was going to say before I finished your thought, you're welcome. Can we see if you know what I was going to say?
No, don't do that. Don't do that. No. That's a trap. Don't fall for that one.
Well, that was a total setup.
Yeah.
Is the uniqueness of self.
Yes.
And the unique expressions of self. So if we could take a live vote right now, I would totally poll our audience which way to go, and we'll go whichever direction we want to go.
Yeah. And we can do both.
Maybe both.
And actually what I was feeling, because it is coming around full circle, I just thought about my son. So like he's out there playing. I know. When your thoughts come in, and right, that's the death. I didn't fight that. I was like, big thought came in, and I was like, okay, let me tend to that energy. He's fine. He's being taken care of. So, and she's witnessing me going through this process right now, right? Yeah. Maintaining present awareness is about letting go of the thoughts, not letting go, noticing a thought as it comes in and being able to acknowledge it without suppressing it. That suppression, right, feels like literal strangulation of what is actually wanting to be entered into the space, right? So as we open up this space for ourselves to, obviously there's structure here, so there's timing here, so some of that is the masculine energy, but the expansion, right, and the contraction is a part of that feminine energy. The way the energy moves into the space, the way it swirls. We can feel our breath, and we can feel when we get tight, and we can feel when we open, and none of those are all those things are part of the journey. And so this podcast specifically will literally do both of those. We're going to feel ourselves expand, contract, which is the position I'm in. And
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, it's okay. And expands because something is always being birthed, and to birth anything takes that expansion contraction. It takes the shrinking and the growing to create space, more space, more space. Okay, let's rest. Okay, more space, more space. Okay, let's rest, right? This is literally how we live our life. This is how we allow ourselves, especially those parts of ourselves that are like sold on who they are. They want to live out, you know, their thoughts, their inclinations, their, you know, whatever that wants, desire, right? When I can sort of bow, which is again part of my contraction, then I'm actually allowing more energy to flow into the space. And when I expand, I'm stepping into that energy that I just allowed in. This is just coming through. I'm having
a moment. It's so, okay. I'm not laughing at you. The thought that just popped in that now I want to acknowledge and not suppress is that process that I witnessed in you over the last few days, from bowing and contracting to not getting what you wanted in one moment, which was an air fryer.
If you don't have an air fryer and you're on your way to get an air fryer and your partner's like, maybe we shouldn't get an air fryer, that might be when you need to bow out. You so graciously bowed out, and I could see it wasn't comfortable in that moment. No. And I'm only using him as an example because it's the one that's really present. I could totally have used myself. And you got yourself an air fryer, babe. I saw it in the car. She saw it in the car.
I saw it in the car. You expanded.
Days later, I was like, I'm going to get this air fryer no matter what.
And I imagine it felt so much more expansive than having me in the car being like, babe, we got 5 minutes. Come on, we got to go.
Yep.
So bowing down.
Bowing down. And that was my death. Me experiencing the death of my desire, what I want, but that aspect of me that, let's say, didn't used to get what it wanted, was told no often, right? That part of me is still very much alive. And when these situations come up in our adulthood, in our, you know, larger self, because I'm just a larger version of my little self, adult, baby, whatever. There is this full circle. There is a reconciliation. I was wanting that word, so I was like, let me create the space for it. There's a reconciliation that is happening. I'm reconciling things from literally like 20 years ago. When that parent or that whoever said, no, you can't have this, right? So that was coming up in the moment with me not really knowing that's what it was. But once I gave myself the space to feel into the emotions that were coming through, then I was remembering. I started to remember, I remember sitting in the car. I remember pouting, you know, I remember crying, not wanting to make eye contact, looking out the window. I remember those moments of angst, of pain, of you know, whatever that was for me as a child. And it was beautiful for me to remember that and to acknowledge it. And again, just love that part of me that maybe didn't get acknowledged when I was, you know, 10 or 8 or however old I was. So thank you for allowing me the room in that moment to process that. And, you know, that was a lot. That was a big day for me. And guess what? I bounced back.
Yes.
Full, because it wasn't repressed.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't shamed. No one felt guilty about what was happening in the space. We allowed the energy to be what it was, and it was tense, right? But tense is just tension, right? Tension means that there's connection. This rope that is between us is taut, right? So as she feels, I witness and I observe, because this is my reflection. As I feel, she witnesses, she observes, without us pushing or pulling each other into the personal space, my personal experience that I'm having in that moment.
Actually, wow, because this idea of tension has been so powerful for me, and I'm gonna first say, by the way, he got the air fryer. You got your desire.
I got the air fryer.
You've got what. So I want to really put a pin in that or highlight that to say, when we bow, when we permit that contraction, that death, we are creating space for what we want, very literally.
Yeah.
Now, what were we just saying? Because that was the other point I really wanted to make.
Tension.
Thank you, tension.
Yeah.
Because the tension, see, sometimes I have multiple thoughts in my head. Tension.
No. That's powerful. Attention is also a tension. So what did she just lose? What she didn't was attention, right?
And that tension, so this idea of connection. So tension, and I would say it to him as if it were a negative thing. Oh, I'm feeling this tension. And that's from my child. That's my little girl.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want tension in the space because I've made that mean something. Now, what I want to highlight here is that means connection. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel it, right? And this idea that you just said about it's not pulling us into their space, because actually, if that were slack, loose, guess what would happen? I would just be in his space.
Yeah.
Or he would be in mine.
Yeah.
It's actually the tension that keeps us in our own space.
Yeah.
And I've literally never thought of that until this moment.
I love it. Stuff is just dropping in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Call that spirit, call that God, call that consciousness, energy, whatever that is whew, it is here in its fullness. So gratitude to that, for you being such a powerful receivership.
So,
let's take a breath. And I'm going to take a commercial break to wipe my face. And we're back. What I was feeling coming up earlier before I got into that stream of thought was how many people right now are feeling, like in the world, are feeling their sense of self in some form of collapse or some form of depression, which is just deep rest, right? How many people are feeling tension, right? They're feeling that their life has really been shaken up in some dramatic ways or maybe some subtle ways. How many people are stepping into a sense of self that they didn't even know was there before, or maybe they did know, right? And now is the space and opportunity to move into that expression. How many people are stepping into their uniqueness right now? How many people are waking up to more of who they are, realizing that the life that they were living was living out less of who they are?
Because as you have already spoken into and we've already shared, that when there is a contraction, which I feel the collective is going through a massive contraction. And this is a big labor we're going through as humanity. And there's this contraction or deep rest, depression happening for so many of us, creating the space in the room for all of that you just said. So for us to speak, or for us to step more fully into who we are, the greatness of who we are, what we desire to experience more of, our uniqueness. By the way, I had a lot of issue around that word for a long time. FYI.
Let's bring it. Let's bring it in.
Because in my journey, I had to first see how we are all the same and how we are all connected and how we are all one. And this idea of uniqueness distracted me from that for a long time. It kept me seeing this being as this unique expression and me being this, and it created more comparison, more tension, which again was never a bad thing. It was because I was connected. I didn't have the awareness yet, which, by the way, if there is this tension in the collective right now, it's because we're connected. So remember that the tension we're feeling, that when we read, which I don't read the news, but if you're reading the news or if you're hearing what's going on and you feel that, ugh, that's because you are connected.
You're connected to the all, to your reflections.
And that's it. Yeah. And if we can let that be a remembrance.
Yeah.
So even as I retell this story, which it's amazing, as I now retell my stories, they immediately dissolve.
Yeah.
They resolve.
Yeah.
Because I see something new in them. So even in this moment, I had this friction with uniqueness because I had yet not fully owned my unique expression.
Yeah.
And I needed to really see how connected and the same, quote unquote, we are.
Yeah. I feel uniqueness is really about, right? So if the collective is doing what the collective does and we're observing the collective as this or that or this or that, right? As we define it using our inner judge of labeling, of, categorizing circumstance and just life in general. Uniqueness in a way is really holding strong, being stable in yourself, knowing that there is something inside of you that is actually being lived out, or that there's the opportunity to have that. If one is feeling like, oh my gosh, this is happening out in the world and I am subject to it, I'm gonna say it a couple different ways. Some people may say that's giving your power away. Okay, let's just imagine that maybe it is. But let's also imagine that if we give into that, if we allow ourselves to be taken by that, what happens to that tension that I'm already feeling? I'm already feeling the tether. I'm feeling the connection. But if I'm feeling like that's taking over my sense of self, then it takes me with it, right? So if there is this rope that's connecting me with everyone else, guess who goes with that energy, with that stream, with that raging river of whatever it is I do? Because I'm not holding firm onto that tension, tethering myself first to what I know, who I know that I am, and then holding the rope taut for, it's like fishing. When you're fishing, no matter, and I've been deep sea fishing, so these are fish that will literally take you. You hold your stance. You hold your sense of self, your knowingness that yes, there is something that is happening on the other end of this line, right? But I'm not gonna jump in the water with the fish, right? To get the fish. And sorry for those that, I've only done it once. I enjoyed it.
You don't need to apologize.
I know. I was just feeling those that
Are you being pulled over the board?
I just got pulled overboard.
You just literally got pulled overboard.
That's a good example. That's a good example of like my attention went to those that may be like, you went deep sea fishing? You killed a fish?
How dare you?
How dare you? Anyways, but yes, it's so beautiful as the examples come in. So I just allowed myself to stay on the boat, on my ship, in my ownership, to allow whatever was to come to me to come to me. And everything else remained the same. The boat I was on, everything remained the same. Everything was safe. So even in our expression right now, this is that. This is holding on to this uniqueness, this expression, this impression, right?
I am loving the paradox. I can't stop.
Yeah.
So, because on the one hand, and we spoke about this in the last episode, so if you haven't watched it, I really encourage you to.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
So, because there is this sense of dying to oneself, to letting oneself, quote unquote, go. We spoke about being water, and we go with the flow and the beauty of that. We can merge and meld, and so it's not one or the other. It's a both and even deeper than that, it's a pure paradox, because when we are truly anchored in that which we are, which is not what we think we are, that's what's dying every day. That's what we're letting go of, or acknowledging and loving and giving space for something else. Like that. That's the sense of those mini deaths. And then when we have that tension, and again, we're not playing tug of war. Like, you come over here. No, we hold the tension.
It's not a battle. Okay. It's not a competition.
It's staying sovereign in our beingness.
Yes.
Then we aren't getting pulled overboard.
Yes.
And there are many of us who do that exact same thing from a very different space. So, because I
feel like you're about to take us on a journey. She's about to take us on a journey. I can't wait to
see where we go. There's this, because if we are rigid in who we think we are, I want an air fryer. I'm just using an example, okay?
Yeah.
And had you been so rigid in that moment, that tension could have actually broken. It could have snapped the rope.
Yes.
No, right? Okay, let's go back to the fishing metaphor. You have a line.
Yeah.
That line is not static.
It's not static. It actually has movement.
Okay,
yep.
So that's important. That's one key piece.
Yep.
There is some bendability. There's some bowing.
Malleability.
Okay.
Yep.
And a very firm stance.
Yep.
So for me, the bendability, the malleability that you...
The flexibility
that you offered was, I know who I am, I know what I want, I know what's important to me, and in this moment, I see that it's not essential. I will, in that moment, that's we caught the fish, let me move so that I don't snap the line.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to come back right into my power and hold that strong so that will now come to me. So I don't even know if it's a paradox anymore. This whole thing has just come out of my mouth in the moment. But there is this sense of what we are saying is true and it's not true.
Yes.
So I'm constantly looking at what is being said externally and internally and going, oh, wow, it's true and not true simultaneously.
Yes.
Simultaneously.
It's part of this journey is understanding that what we once thought was true is now false to the self right now, right? And so we didn't lose our sense of self. It's like taking in more light, taking in more information. It's like higher resolution. We talked about the resolution, right? And definition. The more defined we are, the less resolution there actually is on the screen or on this camera. The more defined we are. So if he zooms in to one small piece, you're going to see something very small, but the true resolution, the true big picture is here. So it's nice to be able to zoom into a truth for a while and live from that place. But guess what? Over time, we're taking in more information. We're meeting new people. We're growing. We're learning. The wisdom continues to come forth. And that is allowing us to look at what we once thought was something as something different. And that's what we're really doing to each other. And that's the reflection of truly, what we're given the opportunity to do in the world right now. If someone was zoomed in on their sense of self and zoomed in on, this was the opportunity, or this was my person, or this was whatever that is, things are being moved, things are moving. And the thing to do, as we say it, step back. What happens when you step back? What happens when you give yourself room to breathe, right? That implies separation, but it also implies giving yourself
more rope. Give yourself more rope.
Gosh.
Put a little slack out in that. You know what I mean? Like, don't just, because again, if you just step back, you'll break it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you get into that tug of war, if you get into that battle.
And yet again, you got it when you're diving, when you got that fish on the end of that line, let that line out a little bit further and then reel it in.
Yep.
So come back.
Or reel it in and then cast it.
Even further. There you are.
See, like if you're truly in like a deep battle with, there's a lot of energy that one is really spending if they're in battle within themselves, which is obviously being reflected, not obviously, but reflected in the reality, in the world, right? So if we're constantly battling, one way to make a decision on if one should keep doing that is how much energy is that actually requiring of you, and how much energy would you like to have?
My curiosity around that is exploring the battle within, because I do feel, for example, that one little thing was I'm just hiding my cord. The battle with myself of am I unique or not?
Yeah.
Okay, and that was just one example of that.
Yes.
I want to go into that.
Yeah.
What is that battle within that we experience that potentially very well could be being reflected in the external world?
When you say battle of uniqueness, are you saying the battle or the tension or the what we're coming into is recognition of our uniqueness? And
yeah, I actually was using that as an example of a battle I have had. However, I'm more interested in that, in understanding, because we are each a unique expression of
consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I do feel many of us battle with that.
Yes.
In one way, shape, or the other.
I see. Yeah, I see. Well, to put it really simply, we're born into very systematic ways of looking at life. And so when multiple things go through a similar system, inevitably you're going to get more of the same on the outside. So if a car goes through an assembly line, right, that car is tailor made to be the same when it comes out. And they're actually betting that each car is going to be the same. And in fact, if there's a defect, right, this is where we're going to go, then that defect is taken out, right, or looked at, or microscoped as like, what is this, right? So imagine like you as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and you wanted to wear the pink and the green that day, and you wanted to, put on the sparkly thing, or you
wanted to wear gray and roll around in the mud.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, you're already in a world where uniqueness is kind of looked at as potentially a defect of like, wow, I wonder what's wrong with that person, right? And so some of us...
You know what I'm thinking right now. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, some of us going through those experiences as little kids learn to minimize our uniqueness. We learn to minimize those qualities that were our unique ways of expressing in order to fit in with the other things that weren't highlighted, the other things that weren't pointed out, right? Especially if we were made fun of or anything like that in school, which many of us went through that in one form or another, right? I was on both ends of that, seeing uniqueness in another, or seeing their unique expression and not being like mine and being like, yo, what's going on, right? Now I'm, as someone who has learned and has come into more wisdom about that each person is on their own time, right? Each person is in their own unique expression, in their own uniqueness. There is now the compassion, which is the space that's being held for more people to come into my space and be witnessed and be seen and acknowledged. Acknowledgement is so key for so many of us, especially now, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I would offer to that, when we are put through that system, that is going to create this inner conflict. If we aren't feeling it is safe to have that defect, to have that other expression. And for me, it can be subtle. This may have been my own battle with the concept of uniqueness. Was I didn't feel like I was wanting to wear tie-dye and cut all my hair off. Like I actually, like I don't feel that that's my unique expression.
We call that a clown in the Midwest.
And yet, I'm noticing even subtly now that it's our unique expression can be as normal or as extravagant.
Yes.
As it wants to be, desires to be. It's not. So I think I, for a long time, kept connecting unique with flashy, with abnormal, with, you know, and I feel that is a little bit of the reclaiming. So when we go through a reclamation process, we kind of need to go, well, then I'm going to go wear, you know, a clown outfit to school because I'm unique. That's simply the unique expression coming out sideways because it didn't have space to say, you know.
Or being just lived out.
Or being lived out. Again, either it's both.
Yeah.
It's both. So it could be in one hand like the, how do I let myself be unique? Because I have a definition of that versus, I really love it when so for example, I was speaking with my client yesterday and we were talking about how I'm very facially, like, I do a lot with my face, okay? I'm very animated, and I'm sure you know that watching this video. And I used to think that I needed to not be so animated. Okay? And
I got a whole...
I know, and this is actually going to probably take us on a whole nother rabbit hole. Because on the one hand, I needed to first see that I was not okay with that. Then I needed the reflection of others to remind me how much they love my animated face and how much they receive from that and what that offers them as a reflection, et cetera, et cetera. And then am I willing to let that go?
Yes, the acknowledgement, needing the acknowledgement. I feel like the acknowledgement is a healthy, just a healthy cue, right? So, okay, great. And then once we are in our own flow and feel like we're in our own rhythm, then not needing the acknowledgement to stay in that rhythm, to allow the rhythm that you find be the rhythm that is coming from within, and not needing to be acknowledged without, and just being okay with that. And the cool part is that the outside world is always going to adjust. It's always going to shift. And so as one comes into that uniqueness, the self-acknowledgement is the only acknowledgement that matters. Your self-acknowledgement of who and what you are is what counts. So we're going to breathe into that.
Breathe in those fumes that we're getting.
There's a very loud truck outside that apparently is somehow is at least 100 feet away. You know what the face thing reminded me of? The session that we led that one day. And we invited beings, right, into expressing through their face just anything and everything that they wanted to, just to be imaginatively wild and just do anything and make sounds, right? And you could see people dying right in front of us. Like right away, some people sank into that. They contracted and they went into maybe more constriction, right? Which is like, I don't feel safe. I don't want to let that out right now. I don't want to be seen, right? I don't want to allow myself to die in that way right now. That's my choice, right? Some people were like, let's give it a try, I think, right? Which is just that curiosity of like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm open to I feel safe whichever way it goes. I feel safe dying. I feel safe thriving. I feel safe in whatever the outcome is, which is, I feel, maybe more of what one's self may want to lead from, is the curiosity, feeling safe enough to step into something, even though there's all the reasons to feel uncertain about that. Finding the few things that we can be curious about that pull us into that new space, that new perspective of who we might be or who we might become.
Without being pulled overboard.
Yeah. I want people to have firm ground, firm footing in the world in general.
Yeah.
At the same time, I want to invite people to allow their energy to speak for itself, right? So if anyone is in a state of contraction, constriction, shrinking, and you've been that way for some time, again, we could call that deep rest, which is totally okay. Sometimes we need to go into those spaces and, right?
Because sometimes we are the fish in the deep sea. And we need to be pulled out of the water.
Gosh.
So if you are in this point in your life, or if you ever have been that fish who has been in a deep, deep rest, rather than
swimming in your own
space,
swimming in your own time,
dark and familiar.
But you're colorful though, because we're in Costa Rica, and the fish in this ocean are like,
yeah.
Like we'll have Esteban throw some colorful fish in like right now.
Then maybe this is your time to let someone cast you a line who is stable and who is firmly planted here to bring you up, to raise you up out of that space. Now the metaphor will have to end there, because after that it gets real messy.
It gets rough.
It gets weird. I don't want you flipping around.
Yeah.
I don't want you. I mean, you may. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You may flop
You
around
might
a bit.
flop around a bit.
You might flop around a bit.
I've definitely flopped around. We've flopped around each other.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The puns. She didn't even get it until
Woo!
Yeah.
So
that's a potential
there.
outcome.
And you may be the one holding the rod for another.
Yeah.
Or for part of yourself. Again, there is no other.
Yeah.
So it could be an aspect of self that you are retrieving, that you are bringing up from out of the depths of that.
Or it could be an aspect of you that is inviting you into your new expression, your new self, your new version.
And so what's beautiful about this is for the next week, Daniel and I are going to be talking about, babe, are you the fish or are you the fisherman today?
And I'm going to be like feeling that tension on the line, knowing that we're both doing the same to each other.
That's right.
Right? Neither one of us are victims to the other. And in fact, because we're in our sovereignty, we get to play a little bit more and accept that role for that moment. And then we give it up.
That's right, because that's the paradox, or the whatever you call
the play.
it, the play of being firm when needing to be firm. So it all finally it showed up for me. We at times are that fisherman and we're firm, and there are times where we are the fish, and it's ultimately we are both.
So if you don't have a fishing pole, we'll have a link at the bottom of this video that will probably, pay us a little bit of money for putting the link there for you to buy a new fishing rod, maybe some fishing line.
And maybe an air fryer.
Maybe an air fryer, probably so. But if you got anything from this video, it's knowing that we are everything, and we're making choices consistently to be the one or two things in any one or two moments. And we're constantly be in flow between ourselves and allowing oneself to play those roles for that moment, die to the other version, come fully into the new version, the new expression, right? And see what happens, see what gifts life is giving you because you've shown up in that way. And then let that go, release that. Because you're always going to have, as they say at night, a good evening. There's always going to be an evening out. When you start to go into your mode of slumber, of sleep, generally there's no desire to be one thing or another. There is this inclination to just be restful and come into your fullness without the pointed uniqueness spilling into your rest, that's a whole nother topic of like, why can't I sleep? I have all these thoughts of, that's, well, maybe we could talk about that. But coming into that evening, coming into that wholeness, knowing that there is this balancing out as you go into that rest state. And guess what? When you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a good morning of what you were yesterday. But you're going to have a grand rising for what you are today. So with that being said,
thank you.
Thank you, Reflection.
Thank you, self.
Yeah, thank you, self.
And thank you, self.
Thank you, self. We will see you soon.
Like, share, connect,
Yes.
drop us a note. We'd
Drop
love to
some
hear from
questions,
you.
some topics if those are coming up.
We'd love to.
Yeah.
Bring that into the pool of
Yes.
possibility.
Yeah. The ocean.
Yeah. We moved from rivers to ocean.
We're Pisces.
We love water.
Did you know I was a Pisces?
Wait, you're a Pisces?
Yeah.
Wait, when's your birthday?
On the 3rd. That's her birthday. All right.
Love you.
Wholeness
Mwah.
and balance vibrations.
Ciao.